Welcome to Eerie Trails. Where the roads twist deeper than they should, and shadows remember your name. Here, every story is more than just a tale. It's a warning. So buckle up, keep your lights on, and whatever you do, don't stop listening, because on these trails, something is always following. Let's begin our first story. They found the camper trailer just outside Marfa, half sunk into the desert dust, its aluminum sides scorched like it had survived a fire, but no burn marks on the ground around it. Inside, everything was intact. Food still in cans, a book still open on the small table, coffee frozen mid-drip in a rusted pot. But the bed had no sheets, just old blood dried into the foam, and the ceiling was covered in writing. Dozens of phrases in shaky black marker, all variations of, "The lights are not stars. The lights are not stars." The police said it must have been some kind of mental break, heat stroke maybe, or drug-induced paranoia. But they never found the owner, and the trailer wasn't reported stolen. No one knew who it belonged to. Then, weeks later, a man appeared at a diner in Alpine, naked, sunburned, speaking in a language no one recognized. He kept looking out the window and whispering, "Don't look up. Don't look up." The waitress who served him quit the next day. She said she saw something moving in the sky behind the clouds, something that blinked like a tower light, but wasn't attached to anything at all. She couldn't sleep after that. Said she kept hearing static in her walls. 2 months later, she drove out to the desert and never came back. Let's begin our second story in Lockhart. A family moved into an old Victorian on the edge of town, a fixer-upper they'd bought cheap after it sat empty for 20 years. Father was a handyman, eager to renovate. The wife loved antiques, and the kids were young enough to see adventure in every cracked floorboard. But in the attic, behind a wall, they found something strange. A small room, sealed from the inside, with scratch marks on the floor and a child's mattress in the corner. In the dust, someone had drawn symbols, circles, arrows, and words in another language. That night, the youngest child began talking to someone in the corners of his room. At first, they thought it was an imaginary friend. Then he started drawing pictures. Always the same. A figure with long arms, no face, and sharp fingers reaching through a wall. He said her name was Mother, and that she lived in the house before them. The dog refused to go upstairs. Doors would open and slam shut. There. Kitchen clocks always stopped at 3:09 a.m. The father laughed it off. Until the morning he woke up with scratches on his back and dirt under his nails. One night, he followed the sound of humming into the basement. The humming stopped when he opened the door, and he never came back up. They found his shoes at the bottom of the stairs. Nothing else. The room behind the wall was sealed again. Let's begin our third story. A teenager named Lexi disappeared near the Palo Duro Canyon during a school trip. She wandered off the trail to take a selfie near the cliff edge, and her phone was later found smashed on a rock below. But no body. No sign of a fall. No blood. Just her phone and a faint trail of bare footprints leading into the brush, too small to be hers and too many to count. Locals whispered about the painted ones, spirits said to live in the red walls of the canyon, who mimic voices and lead wanderers to their deaths. A park ranger who investigated her last known location quit 2 days later. He wouldn't talk about what he saw, only that he kept hearing a girl's voice calling from deep inside a cave that wasn't on any map. He went in. He came back out shaking, pale, and smelling of smoke. The cave had collapsed behind him. And later, when they checked the trail cameras near where Lexi vanished, one showed something horrifying. A girl that looked like her walking past at 3:15 a.m. Days after she disappeared, completely naked, eyes pitch black, smiling at the lens, before disappearing into thin air. Let's begin our fourth story in the town of Van Horn. A trucker named Dale picked up a hitchhiker just outside a gas station. She was pale, barefoot, and wearing a white dress that looked like it came from another time. She didn't say much, just stared out the window as they drove down Highway 90. When he asked where she was headed, she said, "Back home." They're waiting. He thought maybe she'd been at some kind of party or a mental hospital. But when they passed an old cemetery near the edge of town, she said, "Here's good," and asked him to pull over. She stepped out, walked through the gate, and disappeared behind a row of headstones. Dale waited a minute, then followed her. But she was gone. No footprints, no wind, just a grave with her name on it. Born 1892, died 1910. He ran back to the truck, but when he turned the key, it wouldn't start. He spent the night in the cab, locking the doors, watching the gate. Just before dawn, he saw someone standing among the graves. Not her, something taller, with antlers, watching him. When the sun rose, it was gone. But Dale never drove that route again. He sold his rig the next week. Let's begin our fifth story on a long stretch of road between Bastrop and Giddings. There's an old blue barn that's barely standing. People say it wasn't there 5 years ago, or even 2. But now, every time you pass that field, it's there. Same angle, same faded paint. The weird thing? No matter what time of day you drive by, early morning, high noon, midnight, the light inside is always on. A soft yellow glow like from an old lamp. No one ever sees anyone go in or out. But one couple, driving home late from a wedding, decided to stop. They thought maybe it was a themed Airbnb or art installation. They pulled into the dirt road. The barn door creaked open by itself. Inside, it was bigger than expected. Hay scattered everywhere, and a table, just one, with 2 chairs. On the table, a note, "Sit, one at a time." The woman sat first. Nothing happened. Then the man sat. The lights went out. For a full minute, nothing but silence. When they came back on, the woman was gone. The man was sitting alone. The door was shut. He screamed for her, checked his phone, no signal, ran outside, no car, no tracks. He called the police from a nearby diner. They found his fingerprints, his phone, and the note, but no trace of her ever being there. The next night, the barn was gone. Let's begin our 6th story. They say you can hear screams echoing in the devil's sinkhole if you go at night. Not the kind made by animals or wind, but human screams high, desperate, begging. A group of ghost hunters rappelled down into it one October. Only 2 came back up. The rest, they said, never made it past the halfway point. The rope was cut from below. The survivors were incoherent for days, muttering things like, "He was waiting," and "We weren't supposed to see him." They said there was something at the bottom. Something ancient. A face that didn't move. Eyes that bled light. Their footage was corrupted. All that remained was a few seconds of static, and then a sharp voice that whispered, "You belong." To me now. They left the state after that. Changed their names. One died by suicide. The other disappeared in Arkansas a year later. Let's begin our 7th story at a motel off I-37 near 3 Rivers. Guests began reporting knocks at their doors between 2 and 3 a.m. When they looked through the peephole, no one was there. One woman said she saw a child standing in the hallway, facing the wall, whispering. When she opened the door, the hallway was empty. Her carpet was wet though, just a small, muddy footprint. The clerk on duty said there hadn't been any children checked in for weeks. Eventually, a cleaning lady found a small shoe under one of the bed size 3, pink with Velcro, still damp. Room 108 was closed permanently. They say the last man who stayed there was found curled up in the tub, whispering over and over, "I didn't answer. I didn't answer." But he had scratches on his legs like something tried to pull him out. Let's begin our 8th story on the outskirts of Lulling, Where the oil rigs tick like old clocks and the air smells faintly of metal and rain, there's a rusted playground. Behind an abandoned church, it's not marked on any map. The grass is overgrown. The swing set groans in the wind, even when there is no wind. They say it was built in the 1960s for a Sunday school that burned down one summer. No one talks about how the fire started, just that 8 children never made it out. And at night, the playground still remembers. Miguel Torres, a traveling electrician, parked his RV nearby one evening. He was behind schedule, tired, and figured no one would bother him if he camped beside the church. At 2:43 a.m., he woke up to the sound of children laughing. Not joyful laughter, but the high, sharp kind that doesn't sound quite human. He peeked through the blinds. Nothing but fog and rust. Then the RV started rocking, like something was pushing it. He grabbed a flashlight and opened the door. The swings were moving, all of them, in perfect sync. No wind. And standing at the bottom of the slide was a little girl with wet hair, her white dress stained with soot. She raised her hand and pointed at him. Miguel ran. Didn't lock the RV, didn't care. He drove until sunrise and didn't stop until he hit a police station, 40 miles north. The officers went back with him later that day. There was no church, no playground. Just an empty field. But the RV was still parked there, doors wide open. Wide open.